Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Councillor Joyce Crooks, Chair of the Planning Committee, and I'll be chairing this meeting. I'd like to welcome you all to the Planning Committee, which is a meeting to determine the planning applications that are on the agenda. To my right is Councillor Moore, Vice Chair of the Committee, and to my left we have Chris Brown, Jamie Parsons and Maddie Shellard, Planning Officers, sat in front of me and will rotate when the relevant application is before us. Members of the committee are sitting either side of the room, and opposite me are the executive member for planning and ward councillors who are not members of the committee, and members of the public who have registered to speak. I'll start with a few ground rules and some information about the procedure for those in attendance. Could everyone please switch off their mobile phones or put them on silent? I know emotions run high and people do feel strongly, but I'd be grateful if you could avoid clapping, jeering or booing during the meeting. And please be respectful to one another despite differing opinions. I would be grateful if all speakers could keep to their allotted time. Speakers may leave after their application has been determined. We will take the applications in the order that will be announced when we get to that part of the agenda. Those with speakers registered will be taken first. Officers will introduce the report, then speakers will be invited to address the committee. Members will then ask questions of officers and debate the report. A member will then propose a motion, which may be the same as the officer's recommendation or may differ. If the motion is seconded, a vote will be taken. Voting will be by way of a show of hands and by a simple majority unless a recorded vote is requested by members of the committee or the head of planning, with the chair having the casting vote where required. Item 1, do we have any apologies for absence and any substitutions, please, Alex?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Claire Allen, no substitutes.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting. Are you happy that they are an accurate record of the last meeting? Would someone like to propose? Councillor Bray. Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. All those in favour of approving the minutes of the last meeting, please raise their hand and keep it raised until we have counted. Thank you. Abstentions? 1. Against? No. Therefore, the minutes are approved. Item 3, urgent business. I've not been advised of any urgent business. Item 4, do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have a non-pecuniary interest in item 8, so I will leave the room. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Boothby.
Well, you forgot me after 24 years already. Right, okay. Just for clarity, thank you, Chair. As a former member of Rapley Parish Council, this is to do with item 10. Did meet with the applicants and their associates in terms of a briefing, but no decision was taken, no vote took place. I didn't vote on anything, and I come into this meeting with an open mind.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boothby. Are there any further declarations? Councillor Bray.
Yes, item 11 as the acting chair with Lee Parish Council. Declare it's not been to a meeting that we've discussed the house.
Thank you, Chairman. As an acting parish councillor for without the same interest.
It's for Witherley.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's parish councillor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There was 2 items considered at the previous meeting last month. Of those 2, 1 decision has been issued. The other item was deferred. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to the planning agenda and we'll be taking the applications in the following order. Items 10, 9, 11, 7 and 8. So the first item is item 10 on pages 127 to 164. Application number 24/00914/OUT, Burrows Road Recreation Ground, Ratby. Could I ask Louise please to present the report?
Good evening. This is an outline application with all matters reserved apart from access for a mixed-use development comprising 470 dwellings, the provision of a one-form entry primary school, associated operations and infrastructure, open space, landscaping, habitat creation, internal roads and routes, and upgrades to the public highway. This plan shows an aerial map of the site. The application site is outlined in red. As you can see, it lies adjacent to Ratby. Ratby is to the east of the site. Burrows Road runs through the kind of top centre of the site and is identified on the map. You have Desford Lane to the south and Markfield Road to the north. There is also consented development being built out and shown to the north of the red line. This is the site location plan. It just shows the site in a kind of greater context in relation to Ratby and kind of shows the surrounding area in a bit more detail. You have the M1 to the north, Martinshaw Wood, Ratby again shown adjacent to the site to the east. And then you've got the aerial routes and various routes coming through Ratby shown in yellow there. This is a plan, shows the illustrative framework plan. Obviously, this is outline application with access for consideration. The pale parcels show the proposed areas of residential development. The green areas show proposed new woodland planting and green infrastructure and areas of open space. There is an area shown in orange, that's the proposed location of the primary school. There is a route, a north-south spinal route shown that connects or would connect the proposed development with Markfield Road to the north and Desford Lane through to the south. There are some junction improvements, again shown where the purple stars are. And Burrows Road, which runs through the kind of centre of the site, there's going to be a proposed downgrade there along the bottom section of the primary school for pedestrian and cycle access only. You would still be able to access the recreation ground and the Plough-in pub. There would be a turning head there, but for approximately 200 metres along Burrows Road, that would be downgraded for pedestrian and cyclists only, basically along the length of the bottom half of the school. Now follows some access drawings. This shows the Desford Lane proposed site access drawing. This is currently a priority junction, but will be upgraded as part of the proposed mitigation to highways to a signalised junction. That's just the sort of in-depth access site drawing there shown. This shows the internal access for Burrows Road. As I alluded to earlier on, this is proposed to be stopped up in part for approximately 200 metres, but this shows some of the improvements and changes made along the Burrows Road in order to help accommodate the development. Again, we just refer back to the illustrative framework plan just to show again the overall site, to remind you of where the proposed school would go, the parcels of residential development and the open space areas shown in pale green and dark green. And this plan just gives an indication of the open spaces. The proposal looks to provide 1.5 hectares in terms of our policy, but 2.5 hectares of amenity green spaces to be delivered. The existing recreation ground is shown in pink next to adjacent to the primary school, outlined in yellow. Some of that site is proposed to be developed to the top half, but the area shown in pink is the potential area of land that could be gifted to the parish council, defined by the yellow boundary, which equates to around 0.4 hectares. There is also a kind of spinal route through GI infrastructure, which also includes an area in a rectangular shape labelled N. That's a neighbourhood equipped area of play. That would be for more older children, which would provide areas such as a multi-use games area or a basketball hoop. There would be recreational routes for dog walking, and this just kind of shows how the site connects to the residential parcels, the primary school, and then the areas of open space and associated sustainable urban drainage systems, which are shown in blue. Again, Burrows Road is shown quite clearly. There is a dashed line in grey along the bottom part of the primary school again, which seeks to show the downgrading area. It's approximately 195 metres for pedestrian and cyclists only. Then it would link back to the access that runs north-south through the spinal sort of column of the development that would link Markfield Road down through Desford Lane in order to try and alleviate traffic along Main Street and bring the traffic through the development via the new north-south connection. In terms of this proposal, we have gone out, there's been a viability assessment submitted, and we have gone out to a viability consultant to look at all the details associated with this application. This has been an 18-month process. We've looked at this in detail. The main premise is that there is around £10 million worth of Section 106 contributions that will be given by this development to the local area, to the councils for matters such as waste, libraries, SEND education, outdoor sports contributions. The hit has come on viability with respect to affordable housing. This application, from a policy compliant perspective, would need to provide 40% affordable housing. From a viability outcome now, the proposal is to provide 5% affordable housing. The hit comes in order to provide an actual primary school on site. So the developer is proposing to provide land for the school and the delivery and provision of a fully functioning one-form entry primary school on site. And this is also shown in the calculations there. There are also a number of highway improvements proposed. We also have to include a biodiversity monitoring fee now for ecological reasons and biodiversity net gain, so that's included. As you can see, there is a difference in terms of viability and the outcomes. In general terms, the proposal provides 92% of its original 100% requirements in terms of 106, but the hit comes through the lack of affordable housing, which was reduced to 5%.
Thank you very much, Louise. We have 4 objectors, the agent and a ward councillor and 1 parish councillor to speak. Now, bearing in mind that the objectors only have 5 minutes, have you appointed speakers to speak on behalf of all of you, or do you all 4 of you wish to speak?
3 of us are going to speak and 1
Right.
member is here.
Bearing in mind you've only got 5 minutes, please be brief and put your points across as quickly as you can, because I will cut you off when the 5 minutes is up. Thank you. Please start when you're ready.
Hello, welcome to this planning committee. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, it would be a great loss to the village if this site is built on. The ability to walk from the centre of the village conservation area straight into open countryside is a wonderful resource and must be kept. This open country is a major contributor to the local distinctiveness of Ratby. The draft local plan states development proposals resulting in significant harm to a valued landscape will be refused. The large number of objections to the proposal show how much this landscape is highly valued. Ratby has been designated a key rural centre, but suitable for moderate development. This site includes phase 1 and 2 and will comprise 615 houses. The draft local plan states that KRCs should accommodate a maximum of 500 houses per site. The planning balance is clearly misrepresented in the report, page 154. The planning balance is against this development, not in favour. Ratby has already made considerable contribution to Borough's housing need. The second primary school, cited as being of very substantial benefit, is only needed because of this development. Other benefits are all extremely limited. Set against this, the losses of landscape and heritage are very substantial. I strongly urge the members of the Planning Committee to reject this application. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I live in Ratby, overlooking the boroughs, which Lagan have already built over 300 houses. And the dust that's been circulated has been enough to cause me, as a 25-year-old asthmatic, to have serious respiratory issues, as well as a neighbour of mine who's only a few doors down, not even overlooking the boroughs, to be sent to hospital from respiratory issues attributed to the dust and circulation. Also bearing in mind that Ratby has a primary school not 20 feet away from where they'll be building 470 houses, the dust would be catastrophic to teachers and obviously most importantly the children. And also the children's park next door that is even closer to the field would be even more affected. Also, the planning application mentions habitat creation, but whether 470 houses are being built in one go or they submit planning applications once a year for 50 houses, the damage done through churning up the countryside, the dust, the noise, and then eventually cars and houses with residents, that will do more damage to the wildlife and habitat than anything Lagan Homes could do to benefit. I say this directly to the council. I personally see land getting destroyed every day in Ratby, especially. We're losing so much that, frankly, the boroughs is one of the only pieces of land left in Ratby exclusively. And I believe as well as the 2,000 objective residents believe that if this application goes through, it will be the final nail in the coffin for Ratby. Thank you very much.
I speak on behalf of over 2,000 Ratby residents who objected to this most detrimental application, now feeling powerless over your decision, which could forever damage our village, our lives. I speak on behalf of our once protected countryside. Our precious wildlife and nature declined by 40% in the UK, particularly since 2000. Many endangered species are still seen here, including pipistrelle bats. I speak on behalf of Ratby's children, residents bordering this development, Stamford Street, metres away, unprecedented loss of privacy, pollution, security risks to their properties, already alerted to us by Ratby Parish Council. Criminal activity here has increased. Police are involved. Yes, increased dust, widely reported, which Lagan seem unable to control in spite of enforcement. The council is aware of this. A letter sent by the constructors to residents advising us to keep our windows closed all day this year for 3 months, January to March. Ratby is now overdeveloped, damaged by recent excessive house building, roads increasingly congested. New road proposals, traffic controls will not help. Ratby will become a rat run. Additional vehicles from 470 houses will worsen these problems. Increased flooding this year on the low-lying fields where these new houses will be built. Burrows Road flooded too. This in spite of Lagan's huge balancing pond, which has not helped at all. The severity of flooding elsewhere affected all surrounding villages, roads impassable for days. These are material facts. A further 470 houses will increase this risk. These new builds will be at great risk too. The proposed drainage system will prove inadequate. This unique area of Ratby, the Ratby Boroughs, was assessed by a government official at appeal in 2014. So at the highest level, he'd visit the site in its entirety, not just the skewed, inadequate snapshot you gained on your site visit today. His report concluded to build on this area of outstanding open countryside, widely used by the community for leisure and recreation purposes, will be detriment to the village of Ratby.
Your 5 minutes are now up. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, we now have the agent, Sarah Marsh, to speak. Please start when you're ready.
Good evening, members. My name is Sarah Marsh and I'm an associate at Marans, here today on behalf of the applicant Lagan Homes. At the outset, I'd like to thank the officers for their work on this application over the last 2 years and for keeping us on our toes to ensure that we have robustly addressed all the technical matters which have arisen through the consultation process. Ratby is a key rural centre within the borough and has a good level of services, so we understand and support the council's reasoning for the site's draft allocation for 470 homes in the emerging local plan. The site has been a draft allocation since the July 2024 version of the draft plan, and we're pleased that it has been carried through to the Regulation 19 version currently under consultation. The site will provide around 470 new homes, which will go towards the considerable shortfall in housing land supply which the borough is experiencing, and provide new family homes for Ratby. Not only would this site contribute towards regaining a 5-year supply, it would also provide early delivery for the emerging plan, meaning it will start delivering allocations immediately upon adoption, thus reducing the chances of falling below 5 years again and the inevitable speculative application that brings. In addition to the homes, this application would provide wider benefits for the local community, in particular, a new primary school. Ratby Primary School is full, and while there has been recent development in and around the village, these developments have only been required to pay towards a contribution for future education provision, amounting to approximately £700,000, which has yet to be spent. Our development would provide the land for a new primary school gifted to the County Council, as well as providing the remaining funds to enable the county to build the school. This amounts to approximately £7.9 million. This has been built into the Section 106 agreement as set out in the report and will ensure that there is land and sufficient funds to build that school. In addition to the school, the development will also provide significant recreational green space and parkland for the community, equating to about 17 hectares or 52% of our site, roughly equivalent to 26 football pitches. With the existing Burrows Road recreation ground in poor condition, this application would provide for a new playground in the same location next to the primary school, and Lagan Homes has offered to give this land to the parish council along with another parcel within the site. More centrally within the site would be a NEEP, which is a larger equipped play area with more equipment for a wider age range. The centre of the site would also host areas for ball games, including a kickabout area and a hoop for games like netball. There would be spaces for picnicking, dog walking and relaxing, as well as a network of footpaths through the site, away from roads, which would be a pleasant route through the wooded areas. As shown in the recreation strategy, this would incorporate play on the way and wildlife boards, and would also function as a recreational link to the Pear Tree and Martinshaw Woods to the north, retaining those links so valued by the residents. This application has been subject to community consultation and has been extensively scrutinised over the past 2 years. The applicant has worked with the officers and consultees to address queries raised to ensure all matters have been thoroughly addressed. For instance, significant work has been undertaken to scrutinise traffic impacts, with a series of updates and reviews being undertaken. Close attention has been paid to ecological, landscape, archaeological and other matters to ensure that the key consultee objections have all been overcome. As a consequence, the application has been recommended for approval by your officers after a very thorough and balanced process of review. If planning permission is granted tonight, we look forward to continuing to work with the officers and consultees, including the local community and parish council, to ensure that the reserved matters are just as well considered. Thank you for the time this evening.
Thank you very much, Miss Marsh. We now have Councillor O'Shea, the ward councillor, who is actually remotely there to speak. Ozzy, if you wish to speak now, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members of the committee. The Burrows is the jewel in the crown, which is the most beautiful countryside in the village of Ratby. It is used by walkers from around the county. This is at the heart of the countryside, outside the settlement boundary of our village, clearly in conflict with and against policy DM4. This is a rich, beautiful countryside with ridge and furrow. The site is located in the National Forest. Over the past 7 years, Ratby has had over 670 houses passed by the boroughs, not to mention the previous amounts around the bottom of the village, which were for affordable houses. 180 affordable houses were built on Markfield Road out of the 670 houses already passed. They are affordable and are working with housing associations. Houses bring children, and Lagan Homes certainly do not bring community spirit with them. They have promised a community centre to the parish council, removed for extra houses. They have promised an elderly care home, removed for extra houses. They are even taking away the recreation area that has been in the village. You've heard Louise say today that the area could have multi-games areas, and different apparatus on there. Lagans are not going to support it. They're taking away our heritage from the recreation area that was there from 1900. Members, what is this community getting from this application? Nothing. They're not even getting a fully funded school. With all the extra houses that this company has already been building off of Markfield Road, and this application, they cannot fully fund a new two-form primary school. It's an absolute disgrace, and they're only just about funding and not fully funding, I beg to differ, the one-form primary school. Over 2,000 letters of objections have been received, but the planning department have said have accepted 1,000. there are definitely 2,500 and more objections from our community. The cumulative impact of this scheme, and with other schemes, on the infrastructure of this village is absolutely appalling. This site is not simply underdeveloped land. It forms part in the character and the setting and identity of Ratby Village. One that landscape and separation, once that landscape and separation are lost, they cannot be replaced. Traffic queues on Desford Lane in the morning, and the new entrance to the houses is using Desford Lane. Traffic in the mornings queue along Sheshevra Way back from Groby into Ratby. Ratby is the centre of a cog with traffic coming from Desford, Thornton, Kirby Muxloe, Markfield, just to get to the A46 and A50. Over the past 2 years, residents have objected to this application and engaged consistently throughout the process. Their message has been consistent and overwhelmingly clear. They do not want the actual houses. The infrastructure just cannot cope with it. HBB Conservation say that substantial harm to Ratby Conservation Area will happen. We need to conserve remaining ridge and furrow. Active Travel object to the application. Sport England object to the applications. It fails to meet Section 8 of the NPPF. The Borough Council's housing supply has not been counted for April 26. It's expected to be under 5 years, but is not known. It could be 5 years, and that should not be at the detriment to the people of Ratby. This application is only offering 5% of 40% of affordable housing out of the 470 houses they say that they can afford. We should be getting the 40%. Ratby again is losing out, hands down. Members, we are being taken for a ride. 5% affordable housing, community centre promised, removed, care home promised, removed, traffic increased, school not fully funded, the community is getting nothing. No improvements to the infrastructure. This development will have an adverse effect on the intrinsic value of the countryside. And I ask you, members, please refuse this application using policy DM4. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Shea. We have a representative from Ratby Parish Council. You have 2 minutes. Please start when you're ready.
Chair, members of the Planning Committee. My name is Philip Tenwick, representing Ratby Parish Council and Villages Together. Thank you for the opportunity of addressing you today. Our objections are not about development in principle. They concern whether this development is genuinely sustainable, whether the infrastructure can support it, and whether the necessary facilities and mitigation can actually be delivered. Over the past 2 years, Ratby Parish Council has submitted in excess of 3,000 individual resident objections. I know that because I sent them myself. Although recorded by the Borough Council on a per household basis, we ask members to recognise the true scale of individual opposition and strength of feeling within our community. Concerns include highway safety, congestion, cumulative development and pressure on already stretched infrastructure and services. Following your site visit this morning, members will have seen firsthand the constraints on Ratby's road network and very limited capacity it has to absorb additional traffic that this development will generate. We question whether this proposal reflects the government's manual for streets principle and place for movement. In Ratby, where infrastructure is already under pressure, 470 additional homes will inevitably generate significant additional vehicle movements through the existing village. So we ask, are we protecting Ratby as a place and community, or simply increasing movement through infrastructure already struggling to cope? A particularly important issue is Section 106 funding and the community hub. A community hub formed part of the 2024 planning statement produced by Marans, but that provision has subsequently been withdrawn. A development of this scale must provide appropriate community infrastructure. We therefore ask that meaningful enforceable S106 funding is secured to deliver a proper community hub for new and existing residents. We are equally concerned by proposals to build tree houses on the recreation ground at the centre of Ratby. This green space has effectively served as a village green for over 100 years, while the only other significant recreational green space in the village is Ferndale Park, which is at
You
the other
have
side.
had your 2 minutes now. Thank you very much.
Chair, could I just ask for discretionary 30
Very
seconds?
quickly,
Sorry?
very quickly.
Yeah, thank you. Finally, I draw members' attention to the Villages Together representation today in the items paper, submitted collectively on behalf of neighbouring parishes. These
Thank you.
developments cannot continue to be considered by application and in
Thank you
isolation.
very much. Thank you. Thank you. We will now debate. Members will go forward to debate the item. Thank you very much. Councillor Bray.
Yeah, well, it seems like here we are again, really. We're sitting here in this committee looking at probably an unpalatable site that we've got a lot of objections from the public on. But the trouble is that the framework that we're working in doesn't change. The government is very clear. They set as mandatory housing targets that we have to hit. And sadly, we just don't have a glut of sites where we can sort of say, pick one over another, which is I wish we did have. I wish we had, you know, vast amounts of sites that we could leave sites like this where people clearly care for, you know, the surroundings that they don't want to be built on. But we don't. We just don't. And this is the absolute problem. So you look at this. You look at, and I'd be interested in some officer comments about. We've heard from Councillor O'Shea about the housing supply issue. I appreciate some clarity on that. And also, I think the first gentleman who spoke to us said about the planning balance, in his opinion, being wrong. I would like to hear from officers on their view on that as well. The situation we're in is that we just know this government, the previous government, all governments of every colour say that we must build more and more and more houses. If we refuse this today, we just know where it's going to go, don't we? It'll go down to appeal, and and it'll be awarded against us. And the work that our officers have done to secure the Section 106 of money that they've done, and I think they've done quite a good job actually. We've seen a lot worse coming to this committee where viability gets in the way. That list will start to be eroded, and we'll get the development, but we'll just get a lot worse development, in my opinion. So we looked at it. We have the officer recommendation.
Yes, would you like to come in, Ned?
Yes, I think I'll just come back with regards to 2 points on housing supply and the planning balance. As of the last few days, the council has published its April 2026 housing supply figure, and that is 4.48 years. So still short of a 5-year supply, and so the relevant tilted balance in the policies still apply. It makes a big difference to how we must consider applications like this. So I think it's an important note. I appreciate Councillor O'Shea probably it wasn't published last time he checked it. It's literally been the last few days. And then just to go on to the planning balance. On an application of this size, it's complex and there's a lot of matters to consider. And the new National Planning Policy Framework that came out last Monday makes a big difference to this site, as it does many. The late items report has got the kind of latest planning balance, and we've done it in a table format in the hope that it might be a little bit more logical to explain how officers have come to the recommendation that they have. But it details the weight that officers feel must be given to some of the main matters. So housing, affordable housing less than would normally be given because of the reduction, the school provision above and beyond what the scheme should be providing, and then contrary to that, the landscape and heritage impacts, which are completely acknowledged and rightly pointed out by residents. So the National Planning Policy Framework is really clear that to refuse a scheme such as this, we decision makers have to have concluded that the harms not only outweigh the benefits, but they have to substantially outweigh the benefits. And if it's, I would say it's officer's opinion that actually at the moment the situation is reversed and that the benefits substantially outweigh the harms at the moment. And so that policy test is for the planning balance is just not met.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chair. Officers, have I got this wrong? They are only going to provide the land for a school. That's correct. Because I'll tell you for why I'm asking. It means that the finance for the school is going to come from what is now Leicestershire County Council, but may not be there this time next year. And where is the guarantee? Because I find tonight that the school is the carrot that keeps being mentioned, and so I would like clarification, please.
There's a table in the committee report. Forgive me, I've only got a printout of my own. I haven't got the page number, but there's a printout of the viability table that takes you through what contributions the developer is making. One of the boxes says primary education 1 hectare school site, so that's the 1 hectare of land provided. Then it says primary education new school, which equates to £5,893,332.88. That's one of their contribution in terms of what they should have been providing for 470 houses. However, further down the line, there is a box that says primary school funding shortfall, and that equates to around 2.187, call it 2.2 million, but they are giving that as well in order to accommodate the shortfall. So they were supposed to provide 5.8 because as a result of 470 dwellings, that's the amount calculated by education that they should be providing for primary. But because there was a shortfall to get the primary school, they've agreed to provide that shortfall, which equates to 2.187 million, and it's in the box there. And it is set, and it would be included in our Section 106 agreement. So it would be agreed to.
This is the cynic in me. I'm very sorry. Who will hold that money and put the building forward?
Until there's a unitary authority, the process would remain the same. And the unitary is what, 2028, is it? So it. Okay.
Just to jump in, Councillor Cook, it's page 153 of the report that Louise is referring to. Yeah, Louise has her own copy, but in the big pack, it's colour coded table on page 153. Thank you.
Councillor Gibbons.
In agreement with what many objectors saying and what Stuart said, Councillor Bray said, it's not a great scheme, is it? But we may be forced to accept it. But I feel that some of the things that are missing out of the scheme, I don't know why half the recreation grounds being stolen. That seems very odd. It just seems an oversight. Surely there's a whole recreation grounds been used for 100 years. Why is that being taken as part of the scheme when they've got all that other land? That seems a very strange thing to do. When you're fighting against a scheme like this, which I'm sure the residents are fighting, you have to think of what your fallback position is. At the same when we fought against the rail freight depot. And I think some of the things like the recreation ground could be rethought. And it seems a shame that we're only getting 5% affordable homes. I know they're giving all this money and we've done a financial look, but it seems a very big loss that we're only getting 5% affordable homes when we're always talking about the cost of living, how expensive it is. These aren't homes for local people, are they? If you could answer those questions, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Would you like to respond that? Oh, sorry, Louise.
So the recreation ground, as far as I'm aware, the developers actually own that land. So it's sort of rented to the parish council. I hope I've got that correct. So it's within their gift to give, but they are looking to gift 0.4 hectares of that site to retain at least half of that area of the recreation ground. But there would be obviously compensatory measures elsewhere on the site. So there's around 17.1 hectares of GI open space going into the development on top of the gifted site that is currently rented to the parish council at the moment.
Just, yeah, I understand that. It just seems strange to take it off there, which is a bit of land that's currently being used when they've got all this other land that just seems a really weird thing to do. Because that other that recreational land is right next to the village. I'm sure is very well used. I'm afraid I don't know. I don't know Ratby well enough to know, and it just seems weird to say, oh, well, we're moving it elsewhere, which is not local to the people living there.
Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think there is always in planning a degree of give and take, and often a degree of residual harm that must be weighed and balanced as much as everything else. All I think I can say further on this point is the applicant has approached the open space as a whole, and so has weighed up, would it be better to build on a section of that open space there, and therefore, as you can see on this plan, move more woodland planting as a result of the National Forest requirements over to that western side. So they've simply undergone that kind of give and take exercise, and appreciate that it is an obvious loss. But that loss is complicated by the fact that it actually isn't secured legally in the way that some recreational grounds would be. And if they were to come in for housing, there would be quite strong grounds for refusal as a result of that. And the absence of that protection from an ownership point of view is one of the reasons why officers have not been able to push any further than what we've got here. Did you have any specific question with regards to the affordable housing, the 5%? I guess the only thing I would like to maybe add is there's two other relevant matters to affordable housing. One is, were the scheme to have proposed 30 more dwellings at 500, the policy requirement would have been 20%, not 40. I think that's relevant. And the second is that the draft affordable housing policy has, again, looking at the viability of this area in conjunction with other nearby areas, has concluded that 20% is more likely to be your viable amount. So I think as a result, officers have approached that 40% figure with a degree of pragmatism, but the main drop has occurred as a result of a simple trade-off for the full delivery of the primary school. The alternative being the applicant to pay their amount for I think someone's just going to mute Councillor O'Shea for a second there. The alternative being that the applicant could have paid the primary school contribution that they owe, but that simply sit in a pot with Leicestershire County Council and perhaps never develop into an actual primary school, whereas instead what they have done is try to find a way to deliver a primary school and deliver and secure it. I think that's all I can say, I guess, on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. It just seems contrary to the policy that's been announced by Andy Burnham yesterday about building lots more cheap houses, socially acceptable houses, and then we're approving nearly 500 and there's not been hardly any affordable homes. It's clearly a conflict there.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Chairman, I think. Yes, it is very disappointing, 5% of social housing. But if they can prove that it won't work at a higher number, we know from experience that that's the position we'll be placed in, even if we try to insist. Just the same as if this had come up 10 years ago, we would have had a good hearty laugh at the developer's expense. Probably the planning officers would have done that for us. But we are not 10 years ago, we are now. And I sometimes wonder why we're here, because we are actually bound, foot in hand with requirements from the government, regulations, numbers we have to achieve, numbers we have to have built. And the latest thing, I think, is if we have a mayor, it doesn't matter what we say, because he could turn around and say, oh no, we'll do something else. So I seriously do wonder why we're here, but the fact is we are. This is one of those loads we have to bear, and as Stuart said, the fact of the matter is that we really have no choice. We have to comply with these requirements, regulations, numbers, and so be it. And in that context, I second this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Before you speak, I've got to Councillor Boothby to speak before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Having gone through this quite large document, basically what this is, ladies and gentlemen, is a complete rehash of what we had in 2014 with Corey Homes. But then it was 500 homes with that link road. And 3 times this very council, this very planning committee refused it. And then went to planning inspector and he got refused. And then it went to judicial review and got kicked out of the High Court because of the extent and the damage that that would cause. Just look at the size of it. All that land, all that ridge and furrow that should be protected for its own sake. I personally don't think that Lagans have got one iota of an idea to build that school. Otherwise, they would have come up with the money straight away. That to me is painfully obvious. And then to come with a viability study and say, we're only going to offer 5%. That is taking the mick, to be honest with you, because as Scott said, the Prime Minister this morning said, we need 70,000 affordable homes. And on that scheme, 23. When people in the village of Ratby who desperately want to stay in the village, I've got a hope in hell of actually staying in the village. The what should we call it? The Boers Wreck, you've already heard, been there over 100 years. Crowpile carnivals have been on there. The little kids play on there. That's going to be taken away from them. And what's being offered elsewhere? A mugger. Well, we've already got a mugger. It's down on Ferndale. The Boers Wreck and Ferndale Park are only 2 designated play and open space, and they're going to steal it, just like they're going to steal the land, which will be gone. The Boers sits in the top 10 most visited attractions within the borough, used by dog walkers, used by ramblers, used by horse riders, and that is going to be taken away from them because they're going to get blocked off. The people who in the 5 houses who live at the top of the boroughs, which has not even been mentioned, are now going to come down and have a 3-mile detour to get into the village. The highways report really doesn't stack up, even though, again, they've not come to the table, because the impact on the A50 roundabout will be catastrophic, even though quite some time ago, Councillor O'Shea, as the county councillor, had the traffic system put in. I'd finally like to say that back in 2003, when I first got elected, I got elected as a borough councillor, not as a ward member, but as a borough councillor to look after the borough. And that's what we should be doing as a whole. I'm not saying this because I live in Ratby or I'm one of the ward councillors. I'm saying if this was Burbage Common, if this was Earl Shilton, if this was Stoke Golding, I would feel exactly the same, because once it's gone, it's gone. And yes, we are now being hit with all sorts of new things that Ed was talking about, and I just bring you to your attention to there's a new thing called S5 as part of the MPPF, and it says only certain forms of development should be approved outside settlement boundaries, and this is about as far as outside as you could possibly get. These should be approved unless the benefits of doing so would substantially outweigh by any adverse effects. The effects of this will be absolutely catastrophic. And I hear what Stuart's saying, and I hear what Keith is saying in terms of our hands are tied. And I hear especially what Keith is saying, why we're here. We are the local authority. We are the planning authority. So yes, we can make those decisions. And yes, they might well go to appeal, right? But while there's a breath left in my body, there's no way on earth I'm going to support this, because we owe it to the residents of Ratby who have been hammered by development after development after development, and enough is enough. They can't even drive down Main Street anymore because of the HGVs, because of the extra housing. It goes on, and the infrastructure cannot take it. So I'm asking you, right, just for once, stand up for what you believe in, for what you're elected to do, and support me in rejecting this under the terms of DM4. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boothby. Councillor Fleming.
Basically, it's just to kind of look at, again, how we are in this position and how things have been even made more difficult from last week when the new 2026 National Planning Policy Framework came into force. Am I right in thinking, looking at some of the things here, it says there are now going to be more rule-based decision-making processes. In other words, we have to stick to rules now laid down by the government. And I think one of the most important thing now is there is now, you were right, Ed, was it 4.46 years? 4.8. So we haven't got a 5-year housing supply. And it says here, if we haven't got a 5-year housing supply, there is even stronger presumption now in favour of any sustainable development. So it's gone from, well, we could make some things, but now the tilted balance has even tilted even more now towards the developer. In other words, our feathers have even been clipped even more now of how we can try and object to this development. Because I know it's what Chris has been saying there, you know, it's very passionate what he says there. But again, we still have to, you know, it says it's rules-based decisions. We have to apply by these rules, no matter how passionate we are about it. I would be doing exactly the same if there was any. We got some huge developments coming in Burbage, you know, potential ones, 500 houses. And so on and so forth. So we'll be fighting them just exactly the same there. But I probably know what the outcome's going to be, because it's already laid down by the Labour government. They want to build these 1.5 million houses. We heard today how many they're going to push through sustainable, you know, the support housing and what have you. You know, that's being pushed through on us. We have no choice on building those houses. So this is it. The balance is tilted in the developer's favour now, even more so than what it was last week.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming, and I do agree with you. In Desford, we've got 550 coming, so we're all suffering in the same way. Councillor Moore.
Yes, you've sort of stolen my thunder, really. I mean, I you know, to respond to Councillor Boothby, I agree with a lot of the broad sentiments that you're making, but I would say that people in Hinckley, people in Burbage, people in North Shilton, certainly people in Barwell, somewhere I've represented, would all have the same view. Similarly, people in Desford, Market Boss are all facing this similar pressure. And the terrible difficulty we've got, and it's the devil's own choice, really, that we've got to find these houses that are spaces that have been imposed by central government. And whether it's been a Labour government or a Conservative government, or even, dare I say, a coalition government, all governments have basically imposed similar sorts of rules. In fact, it's got worse now, but it's only really a continuation of a process that's gone on for a long time. And frankly, if people want to stop this happening, they've got to use their votes, and they've got to speak to their MPs, and they've got to put pressure at Westminster, because frankly, we don't have a huge amount of power here. We like to think we do, of course. We try to push things and improve things as far as we can. But the reality is, if we were to turn this down today, and I understand members are tempted to do so, I mean, in some ways I'm tempted to do so, we know what the consequences would be. This would go to an appeal, and we wouldn't really have a chance. Look at the actual planning balance assessment that's been put forward. Not only would we actually lose, but we'd end up actually wasting a large amount of council taxpayers' money, large legal bills for no purpose. I do agree we have to fight some of these where they're completely unreasonable. And I do sometimes you have to stand up and make a principled stand. But you also have to be realistic. You have to balance that against whether you've got any real chance of winning. And frankly, we've got a whole body of planning expertise in this room, and the unanimous really view of all the professional staff is that we haven't got a chance. We've also got people who have been worked on this committee for many, many years, including, you know, Councillor Linshaw, who's been here since the 1970s. There's a huge body of experience, again, looking at these rules and regulations, saying we haven't got a chance of winning this. So all we're doing is throwing money away, I'm afraid. We're throwing away your money in fighting battles that we simply can't win. because the game is skewed. The rules are skewed against local authorities standing up for local interests. That's the reality. And if you want to do something about that, you know, contact your MPs and think about how you vote next time, because that's the reality of the situation. That at the moment we're faced with governments that have just imposed these rules on local people and local authorities. And frankly, we have very little choice. It's a devil's own choice. I do think that please do have some sympathy with members of this committee, whoever they vote tonight, because none of us look at these issues lightly, none of these issues carefully. We've all read the reports and considered them in some detail. But frankly, I think the only reasonable thing to do in the circumstances is to let this go through. It's only I remember outline planning permission, and then fight really hard to get the best deal for the primary school and to the other facilities that we want during the reserve matter stage. That's the only real strategy we can. Yeah.
Unfortunately, having said that, we're not likely to get reserve matters because by the end of October that will have been taken away from us.
They do.
So yeah, sorry, Councillor Allen.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I'll start off by saying I recognise that we're in somewhat of a bureaucratic straitjacket. As my late parents would tell you, I've never been much good at doing what I'm told. So I've got a couple of concerns about this one. So first of all is the impact on the National Forest, which sort of borders up to the site. Anyone who's tried driving through Ratby knows it's already absolute chaos. So this is just going to make things a whole lot worse. Then it's already been mentioned, 5% affordable housing. Let's actually put that in some numbers, shall we? So the proposal is we get, or there would be 23 affordable houses. It should be 40%. That would be 188. So that would give us a deficit of 165 desperately needed affordable houses, which just doesn't sit right with me. And also an outline, we always hear lots of benefits mentioned by the agent. By the time we actually get to the end of it, few, if any, actually end up getting delivered. So I'm going to second Councillor Boothby's motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Bray.
I was just going to make the point that you made yourself, Chair, and that is about a number of these items that we're considering tonight. We won't even be able to consider, in 2 months' time, because the government has changed the rules even more to say that now a whole swathe of the planning applications that councils could look at, council members would look at, will now not go anywhere near members. It's going to all be dealt with in, effectively in secret behind closed doors by professional planning officers. And whilst having confidence in their judgment, there is no democracy there. And it is a retrograde step, and it is, and I also think, I genuinely believe this is a big driver amongst the unitary proposals. It is because if you look at places like Leicester, it specifically says in the government's letters that they want to create these bigger councils to allow more housing development. So every single step of the way, there's more and more pressure and hurdles put against councils who want to block inappropriate development.
Yeah. Before we take a vote, do we want to make any further comments? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. There was just a couple of just sort of factual points, I guess, just to make it really clear. So the first one is the primary school. The developer isn't proposing to build it. That isn't what's on offer here. The proposal is to fund the county council to build it. I just wanted to be really clear on, because I think it's really important that especially fully fund the primary school. I think it's really important for the residents in the room to know who is involved and what the developer is and isn't doing. And then the second one is just on policy S5, and just to be really clear on how the new wording is set. It sets a presumption against development in general, but for specific things. So there's lots of common rural types of development, but including one of the things that you get your presumption in favour of is housing when you don't have a 5-year housing land supply, and that's why the positive, the stronger tilted balance is in favour of this scheme tonight.
Thank you, Ed. We had the first proposal was from Councillor Bray to approve the application, seconded by Councillor Lynch. So we'll have to take that one first. So all those in favour of approving the application, please raise your hands now and keep them raised until Becky has counted. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Against? 1, 2, 3. Abstentions? 1. The application therefore is approved. Before we finish, can I just say, obviously now the application has been approved, that we speak to the developer and make sure that all the roads are adoptable, that street lighting is throughout the estate, solar panels, fast fibre broadband and water retention tanks. Those are the things that we wish to see with this application.
Chair, can I also comment in that if that colourful table of goodies or things that make this more acceptable starts to diminish through the process, I think we should get this report back to this council, because I'd certainly would.
Yes,
different.
I'm very sorry that this is the way that it's gone tonight, but it's not. We've got 2 or 3 that's coming up that's going to be just equally as bad, I'm afraid. And because we're not going to be able to deal with reserved matters, that is why I put those things in at the end, because otherwise we're not going to have any discussion with it. Yeah. I believe the agent was taking notes of those things, so we'll look forward to seeing what you come up with. Thank you. If you wish to leave, please do so before we go on to the next item. Thank you.
On to speak, and when you finish. Just hit it.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll now go on to item 9 on page 73 to 126. Planning application 25//01157/OUT, land opposite industrial estate, Hill Lane, Markfield. Matt, could you please present the report?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, everyone. This is an outline application for up to 67 dwellings at land west of the industrial estate on Hill Lane in Markfield. Only access is sought for approval at this stage, with all other matters reserved for approval at a later stage. The application is on the agenda this evening following the receipt of 26 objections from 20 individual addresses. So there's an aerial map there showing the site, which measures approximately 3 hectares and is located on the west side of Markfield to the east of Hill Lane. The land is currently made up of grassland, scrub and trees, and to the north and east of the site is existing residential built form, commercial buildings to the west, and to the south, footpath R17, some further dwellings and Hillhole Nature Reserve. So this slide shows the site location plan. Again, just reiterating where the existing residential development is, and it is an indication of how development could fit in the existing pattern of development. This is the proposed access onto Hill Lane, which also shows the footpath which is proposed on the east side of Hill Lane. This would connect the site to Ashby Road to the north and to footpath R17 to the south, which is next to the Nature Reserve car park. As part of the planning obligations package, footpath R17 would be upgraded to provide a more accessible pedestrian link from the site into the centre of Markfield, and a contribution would be made to the Colville Transport Strategy. There are no objections from County Ecology or the local flooding authority, and the local highway authority has confirmed that the access is safe and suitable with no adverse safety impacts associated with the industrial estate opposite. County Archaeology have recommended trial trenching is undertaken prior to determination. But as the application is an outline with no fixed layout, officers consider that it's appropriate to include a condition for a programme of archaeological works to be completed prior to the submission of reserved matters. So on the screen now is the indicative layout, which shows a low density scheme with pockets of development dispersed around the site. Large areas of foliage and trees are retained. The grey box in the centre of the site, in the sort of northern area, would be a equipped area of play. And to the east is an attenuation basin. It should be noted that this layout is not fixed, and it would be subject to future consideration at reserved matter stage. So moving on to the planning considerations, and by virtue of its location and the quantum of development, the proposal would result in the encroachment of residential development outside of the settlement boundary. As we've discussed earlier on tonight, policy S5 of the new planning policy framework states that only certain forms of development should be approved outside settlement boundaries. One of the forms of development which could be approved are for housing which addresses an evidenced unmet need. And again, as we've discussed, the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply at present. Policy S5 also requires development to be physically well related to an existing settlement and to be of a scale which can be accommodated through existing or proposed infrastructure. It's considered that the proposed scheme would form a logical extension to the existing settlement in spatial terms, and contributions towards the Markfield Medical Centre, Mertonvale Primary School and highway improvements would ensure that the proposal meets these criteria, subject to conditions and further obligations secured by the Section 106 agreement. So moving on to the planning balance exercise, officers consider that there would be permanent harm to the rural character of the area. However, the edge of settlement location with existing development to the west, north and east means that the development would not extend beyond the perceived extent of Markfield. The proposals would retain key trees and include a comprehensive landscaping scheme. Therefore, the proposal would result in a moderate adverse landscape harm overall, and moderate negative weight is assigned to this harm. More new framework policy is policy S6, which relates to neighbourhood plans and states that housing proposals, the benefits of approving development is likely to be substantially outweighed where a proposal would conflict with a neighbourhood plan made within the last 5 years. In this case, whilst the Markfield neighbourhood plan is less than 5 years old, it does not take into account the latest evidenced housing need in the borough. On this basis, the neighbourhood plan does not contain policies and allocations to meet its current identified housing requirement. Therefore, policy S6 is not applicable, and no harm is identified by virtue of the site not existing as a neighbourhood plan allocation. Staying with the neighbourhood plan, harm is identified as the site lies entirely within a green infrastructure area. Whilst compensatory planting is proposed, the retention of less than half of the site as green infrastructure means that the loss of a significant area of green infrastructure would result in conflict with policy M3 of the neighbourhood plan and is afforded significant negative weight. So lastly, turning to the benefits of the proposal, substantial positive weight is afforded to the social benefits of providing up to 67 dwellings in a sustainable location. 27 of these dwellings would be affordable, helping to address the council's unmet need. Moderate positive weight is afforded to the economic benefits associated with the construction and occupation of the development. And by virtue of these factors, it's considered that on balance, the benefits of approving the proposal would not substantially outweigh the adverse effects, be outweighed by any adverse effects, sorry. It is therefore recommended that permission should be granted subject to 29 planning conditions and section 106 obligations.
Thank you very much, Matt. We have an objector, the agent, and one ward councillor and one parish councillor to speak. Matt Clark, as the objector, you will speak first. Please start when you're ready.
It's actually Mark Clark. Thank you very much. Yeah, okay. Good evening. My name is Mark, and I've lived in Markfield for over 30 years. In that time, Markfield has slowly gone from a quiet rural setting surrounded by open countryside to an expanding location that's now developed from all directions, with creeping industrialisation and more new housing. In the recent past, many new developments have been agreed or are planned in the locality, and the impact of these developments has resulted in insufficient infrastructure, adding to increased congestion, pollution and pressure on local services. Markfield residents have worked hard to develop a local plan which seeks to protect the rural setting of the locality, safeguard the character of the landscape and preserve important green infrastructure features. These developments have little or no recognition of these matters and are progressing in a very haphazard manner that goes against many of its key principles. The developments significantly alter the character of the area. The local school is already full. It is increasingly difficult to access local surgery. Markfield hasn't had a post office for nearly a year with no date for resolution. On-street parking and traffic are a major problem, with residents having difficulty leaving and entering the locality at peak times, particularly around school start and finish times, with traffic often showing little respect for other road users driving at excessive speeds through the local community. There is a steady erosion of green space around Markfield with the associated impact on the locality. This site is a greenfield location. Vast areas of productive land are already being lost and the UK cannot meet its farming needs without long-term imports. The loss of more greenfield sites will reduce the country's food security. How important do you feel food security really is? An independent arboricultural assessment was commissioned in March 26, and the report identifies the historic importance and collective value of the boundary trees, the substantial public visibility and amenity contribution, and provides evidence on the condition and retention of the trees associated by proposed draining work. Some of these trees are over 100 years old, provide visual amenity and are long established boundary feature rather than isolated specimen. The report questions the condition attributed in the application's assessment and indicates that the mature trees can be retrained rather than removed for the proposed drainage works. It also notes that the remnants of historic hedgerow boundaries within the surrounding area contain trees protected by tree preservation orders, and a TPO request is outstanding. The report also questions the accuracy of some sections of the boundary shown within the proposal and identifies specific trees and a long-established hedge and ditch within the boundary of adjacent landowner. Loss of green space has an associated impact on ecosystems. The site has recorded presence of many rare and unusual fauna, flora and wildlife, including red-list birds such as cuckoos and hobbyhawks. As well as having many mature trees, the site has mature hedgerows and important scrubland. There's evidence that badgers are active at this location. Local people say the development site was in the past used for the disposal of domestic waste. This raises significant questions about contamination, the release of hazardous materials, and associated risks to health and safety. Any associated groundwork prevents the risk of runoff of contaminated water into the Hillhole Nature Reserve. This site contains one of the few UK isolated populations of the rare and legally protected white-clawed crayfish, and is also part of the Charnwood Forest Geopark, the UNESCO Global Geopark containing significant geology and an important site that brings many local, national and international visitors. Any development presents issues for the state of the park and its attractiveness. This location presents significant issues in terms of traffic congestion and the safety of road users and pedestrians. An industrial estate is close by and shares the same access road. There are significant vehicle movements and congestion at all times of the day. Hillhole is a popular thoroughfare for local people walking, and the road does not have a pavement and people have to walk on its whole length with dogs. This presents safety issues as the road has heavy usage of traffic, rat running, the often congested M1 and A50 roads. The car park for Hillhole Nature Reserve is often busy and full and has space for around 8 vehicles, with vehicles often parked on the verge with single file. Recently, there were 20+ vehicles parked on the road as a result of a large gathering. Markfield residents don't want any more development. They are fed up and concerned with overdevelopment in the locality, and there's growing evidence of people moving away. In summary, I urge you to be bold, do the right thing, and decline this application to support the health, wealth and safety, welfare of residents, the people who voted you in, the people who diligently pay their taxes and use local services, and the people who live with the detrimental impact of these developments on a day-to-day
Thank you,
basis.
Mr Clark. Your
Enough
5
is
minutes
enough.
are up.
Please take heed, support local people and bear in mind the long-term impact of the decision. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr Clark. We now have the agent, Max Sellers, to speak. Please start when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Max Sellers from Serda Planning, here on behalf of the applicant, Glenalmond Developments, who have a track record of delivering sites within Leicestershire and Hinckley and Bosworth. The application site is adjacent to the settlement boundary of Markfield in a sustainable location on the edge of the village, which has a wide range of services and facilities within walking distance. The site is visually well contained by existing housing to the north and east, the commercial estate to the west, and established boundary vegetation to the south, and therefore is in a suitable infilling location for residential development. The site is not publicly accessible and is of a neglected nature. It is currently characterised by a mix of overgrown hedges with scattered mature trees, scrub and rough grassland. Following discussions with officers, the layout has been fundamentally revisited to retain wherever possible the existing hedgerows and trees within the site. The illustrative master plan accompanying this outline application shows the provision of significant areas of green space, which will provide the framework to deliver a well-designed development. The proposals have been through extensive discussion with officers to deliver an appropriate design response. In the preparation of the neighbourhood plan, the site was identified as the second highest preferred site in the resident survey undertaken, behind only the Gelson site, which was allocated. As such, this site is well placed to accommodate further growth. As part of that process, residents also identified they would want to see a footway provided along Hill Lane, with existing users having to walk along the road. The proposals will deliver the requested footpath. The site would be accessed from Hill Lane and includes altering the speed limit on approach and alterations to the highway widths to account for formal and informal parking along Hill Lane associated with the commercial estate. A road safety audit has been undertaken to ensure Hill Lane is safe in conjunction with the commercial estate and has been tracked to ensure it remains suitable for heavy goods vehicles. There are no objections to the proposals from any statutory consultees. The development will deliver up to 67 homes, of which 40% will be affordable. The Section 106 agreement will also secure financial contributions towards highways, public rights of way, healthcare, sports facilities, open space, national forest planting, and library and civic amenity facilities. The committee report confirms that this application constitutes sustainable development. The planning officer has provided a comprehensive report identifying limited instances of harm set against numerous benefits of varying weights before recommending that planning permission should be granted. I hope you are able to support the officer's recommendation, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr Sellers. We now have Ward Councillor, Councillor Claire Harris to speak. Please start when you're ready.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Firstly, I'm a little bit bedazzled as to the item on the agenda is worded land opposite an industrial estate when it's actually land adjacent to a nature reserve. I'm here tonight to object to this application and to echo the concerns that have already been raised by residents and that will be raised by Markfield Parish Council. At the heart of this application is a simple question. Is this genuinely a sustainable development, and do members have sufficient evidence before them to approve this tonight? The applicant attempts to address sustainability by proposing a surfaced route through Hill Hole Nature Reserve. However, simply tarmacking a path through a nature reserve does not make the site sustainable. The reality is that the site remains physically disconnected from the village. Residents would still require to travel along Hill Lane, a narrow, unlit road with no continuous footway and traffic travelling at significant speed. At the bottom, where Hill Lane meets Forest Road, there's no protected crossing facility to safely connect pedestrians to the wider village. Crucially, it's also the only route that secondary children can walk safely to school, or shall we say in this case, unsafely. National planning policy requires safe and sustainable access for all users. Core Strategy Objective 13 seeks to reduce the reliance on private cars and promote walking and cycling. Yet this proposal does precisely the opposite. Highways mitigation measures and financial contributions as justifications for the scheme. Those measures do not solve the fundamental problem. Another financial contribution towards the A511 growth corridor does not create a safe walking route along Hill Lane. It does not provide a continuous footpath, street lights, and it does not provide a safe crossing at the bottom of that road for secondary school children to walk to school. Members should therefore ask themselves whether these contributions genuinely mitigate the harm created by this development. The application also conflicts with local planning policy. DM4, safeguarding the countryside, requires development to avoid significant adverse effects on the intrinsic value of the open character of the countryside. The site lies outside the settlement boundary and extends development into the open rural edge. The site is also identified as part of the village's green infrastructure network, and Markfield's Neighbourhood Plan Policy M3 requires development to avoid significant harm to those important green infrastructure assets. Yet this proposal introduces housing into a sensitive landscape setting adjoining to a nature reserve. However, my greatest concern tonight is archaeology and the lack of evidence before this committee. Members will be aware that archaeological concerns surrounding this site are not new. A previous application identified the need for further investigation in what may lie beneath the ground. Archaeological works have been requested for years. More recently, this application was removed from this committee whilst archaeological matters were being examined. So I ask, what has changed? Why was this work not undertaken when it was first requested back in 2021? Why was the application withdrawn last month for further archaeological tonight, with the committee still being asked to approve before these concerns have been fully resolved? And why should members believe that investigations which have not been carried out when requested will suddenly be carried out once a planning permission has been granted? There's also a wider question regarding contamination. This site has previously been recorded as a landfill site. If archaeological and ground investigations have not been fully completed, how can the committee be satisfied that contamination risks are fully understood? Any undiscovered contamination could have implications not only for future residents, but also for the adjacent Hill Hole Nature Reserve and the protected species that depend upon that habitat. Surely the prudent approach is to establish what is beneath the ground before granting permission, not afterwards. The officer's recommendation effectively asks members to accept that these matters can be dealt with through conditions, but conditions are not evidence, conditions are not investigations, and conditions are not answers. The committee regularly reminds residents that every planning application must be considered on its own merits and on the evidence before it. Apologies. Tonight, I respectfully ask you to apply the same principle. Put aside future conditions, put aside future investigations, put aside future promises. Based on the evidence available tonight, do you genuinely have enough information to conclude that this is a sustainable development, that secondary school children can safely access local services, that archaeology has been properly assessed, and that any contamination risks have been fully understood? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. We have a representative, sorry, Councillor Harris. Apologies. Senior moment. We have Councillor Helen Oliver from Markfield Parish Council. You have 2 minutes. Please start when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, members. I'm Helen Oliver speaking today on behalf of Markfield Parish Council in objection to this application. The Parish Council is not opposed to new housing. Markfield has already accepted substantial growth, but planning decisions must be plan-led. I ask members to consider one simple question. What has materially changed since this council refused planning permission on this very site back in 2022? At that time, the council concluded that harm to the countryside, green infrastructure and landscape outweighed the benefits, and there was insufficient archaeological evidence to properly assess the site. Today, the officer's report still concludes this proposal is unacceptable in principle under the adopted development plan. Members are therefore being asked to decide whether there are sufficiently compelling material considerations to justify departing from that plan. We recognise the housing need has increased. However, the site remains outside the settlement boundary, the identified landscape harm remains, and the proposal continues to conflict with policies M2 and M3 of the Made Markfield Neighbourhood Plan, with the late update confirming significant negative weight for the M3 conflict. The application was withdrawn from last month's committee for further consideration of archaeology, yet the report before you still records Leicester County Council Archaeology as holding objection. Leicester County Council specifically considered whether trial trenching could instead be conditioned before reserved matters, but reiterated it should be undertaken pre-determination. So what has materially changed since July? Members, the fundamental planning conflict that led to the refusal in 2022 remains. A £21,000 contribution cannot replace the permanent loss of green infrastructure and landscape character. Hinckley and Bosworth's Regulation 19 plan now identifies its proposed housing allocations for Markfield, and importantly, this site is not now one of them. The Parish Council respectfully submits that the increased housing need does not justify departing from the adopted plan to approve this allocated site. We therefore ask you to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Oliver. We will now go on to debate the item, including moving and seconding it. Councillor Bray.
Yes, Chair. I think a lot of the arguments we put in the last one probably similarly applies to this, although I would say I do think actually in terms of some of the schemes that we look at, I think actually this one is slightly more attractive. I am just a bit concerned about this point about archaeology and things. I'd like to hear what our officers have got to say on that, really, because it'll depend on the proposal I move, whether to defer it for that or approve.
I can come back on that point. So the applicant was encouraged to undertake the predetermination trial trenching. However, the sort of agreement that was come to was that there would be a planning condition, which is number 28 in the report. So the prior to the submission of reserved matters, the archaeological work is undertaken. So essentially, if anything was found as part of those, the trial trenching and metal detecting, the reserved matters submission could then be designed around that. That was considered to be sufficient.
Back on that,
Thank you.
because I don't think that's acceptable. I'll move that we defer the item for that work to be done.
Did you want to?
Slightly after the fact, I think, if the motion's been made, but sorry, Chair. I just want to say that there is an increasing trend of Leicestershire archaeology looking to have some of this information prior to determination, and officers have a responsibility to balance those requests again and ensure that they are reasonable, and also I think to bear in mind what the outcome of that would be. And instead, and then this has happened, for example, on the New Bold Verdon scheme that was refused at Planning Committee, where enough work was done to understand the potential scale of archaeology concerns, but enough control was retained so that, and crucially, this is an outline scheme, so it's an up to development. And what that means is that the archaeology work gets done before the reserved matters get submitted. And if the archaeology work finds something really substantial in the northeast corner, for example, those houses don't come forward. And that's where and why officers felt comfortable not requiring that trial trenching before, because we have that control later on. Just to explain, I guess, why officers are comfortable. So completely understand the logical concern of why aren't you listening to the archaeologist? And the answer is we are. We just think that we can time it slightly differently and get the same outcome.
To get that, we can condition that. Yeah.
Yes, that's a recommended condition.
I was going to say, can include that in the conditions. Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you very much, Chair. If we can just start off with a question for the officers. So the 470 that we've just passed for the unfortunate people of Ratby, I think that probably takes us just over a 5-year housing land supply, doesn't it? Could you confirm that, please?
No, because the 5-year housing land supply, I can't tell you definitively, but my estimation is no, because I think the shortfall was in the mid 350s ish. And so to get us into a 5-year supply, all of what we've just permitted tonight would have to be built in the next 5 years, and it won't be. It can't.
Chair, it's only an outline scheme. Surely it needs reserved matters.
Yes, exactly. You're looking at a couple of years before groundworks begin, 1 year further before the development starts. What that phase 3 is allows them to continue off 1 and 2 and move straight on to phase 3. So there will be some housing probably added to the 5-year supply, but it won't be the full 470. Basically, just to be clear, it's slightly complicated maths, but that's the way it's calculated.
Okay, thanks, Ed. It was worth a go. Thank you. Yeah, I support the deferral. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Boothby.
Thank you, Chair. Yet again, and it seems like every month there's an application for Markfield. I might be wrong, but that's what it seems like. We are where we are again, as we just were with Ratby. I'm not comfortable with not knowing what's down there, to be honest with you. And in terms of this trial trenching, that should have been done a long time ago, before this application was submitted. And it goes on to say it's being included as a condition prior to the submission of reserved matters. Well, we've already heard we're not going to get to reserved matters much longer, are we? So I will second Councillor Bray's thing to defer this until that work is thoroughly completed and we get to see the results. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Boothby. Councillor Gibbons.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting that last time this came, it was refused on DM4 and on archaeology. Two things that are still against it now, and we happily refused it at council. Not only that, it's not in the local neighbourhood plan, it's not in our stage 19 local plan. So I don't know how, when all the plans are against it and the same things that were against it last time when it's refused, why we now think it's an acceptable site. It seems more stacked against it than it did last time it came through. I'd be happy to refuse this, but if people wish to defer it for archaeology, that's fine.
I think if you read the new planning guidelines,
I have read them,
PPF, then that's the reason why it's the change in the policy. Sorry, councillor Moore and then councillor Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a clear case for deferral here. I mean, I think the story about the archaeological trenches that were suggested in 2022 that still haven't happened, I think is a pretty good reason for them to happen and to be proper survey to be done. I mean, as some of you know, I've done a bit of archaeological work in my time, and asking professional archaeologists to come to review without basic survey work being done is ludicrous, frankly. So on that basis, I think we should go for deferral as suggested.
Thank you. Councillor Bray.
Well, as the point's been made that, you know, reserve matters, it's all very well saying, oh, we'll condition it and to bring it back at reserve matters. The issue is we won't get to see the reserve matters. So I think it is the right way to go. I think you know, to comment on what Councillor Gibbons said, obviously since there, I think we've had two or three NPPF revisions since 2022, which again, you know, makes it more and more difficult every time. As I say, as schemes go, I think this is one of the better ones that we get. It's well laid out. It looks nice, but I do think we need to have that information before we can make that decision.
So you're sticking with your, yeah, and Councillor Ann, did you second? Sorry, Councillor Lynch, right, sorry, I didn't, sometimes I can't hear very well. They do speak very, very quietly over there, don't they? And it's very difficult to hear what they're saying. So, Ed, did you want to come back? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we work exactly with the developer's committee desire if this motion succeeds. So is the reason for referral to carry out the requested trial drenching? Thank you.
So we've had a proposal to approve the application. No, to defer, sorry, oh God, to defer the application. Put forward by Councillor Bray and seconded by Councillor Lynch. All those in favour of deferring the application, please raise their hands now and keep them raised. And I think that is unanimous. That deferral then is to go back to the applicant, get the archaeological surveys completed, and then come back with the results later on. Is that correct? Am I correct in that assumption? So that is the reason for deferral, is to get the archaeological tests done and come back with the application at a later date. Thank you very much. Therefore, the application is deferred. Thank you. If you wish to leave, yeah. Yeah, we'll wait while people leave the room. Thank you. We'll just wait while the councillors come back and get seated. Thank you. Just waiting for Councillor Bray to come back. Thank you very much. So we will now proceed to item 11 on page 165 to 191. Application number 25/01231/FUL, land of Church Road, Witherley. Could I ask Ed please to present the report?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The application before you is for a single self-build dwelling and an associated detached garage. The site is presented to the committee due to the receipt of 5 neighbour objections. Here's the aerial map. As shown, you can see that the site is located west of Church Road, adjacent to Post Office Lane, and bound to the west by the River Anker. The application site, whilst located within close proximity to the settlement boundary, sits outside of that boundary and therefore is classed as countryside. The site is located within the Sence Lowlands character area and the Witherley and surrounding landscape sensitivity area. It's also located within the Witherley conservation area and is defined within that conservation area appraisal as a key open space and has heritage significance. A small area of the site is located within flood zones 2 and 3. However, the development and the garden for the property lay outside of the flood zones. The land levels of the site slope down from the east, from the west from the east towards the west towards the river. Here's the site location plan in red, and you can just see the neighbouring dwellings up to the north here and to the south down here. Here's the site plan, the proposed site plan. So as shown here, you can see that the site is accessed off Church Road in the southeast corner. And it's noted that county highways hold no objections to the proposal, providing conditions are applied. After accessing the site, there's an area of hard standing located forward of the proposed dwelling and detached garage. The dwelling is sort of central within the plot, and owing to its height will be visible from public vantage points. The garage structure will be screened from public view owing to the existing mature and boundary treatments and trees. Further landscaping has been recommended and secured, would be secured by condition. All of the mature trees that are on the site here are to be retained and offer screening of the dwelling itself. The trees to be removed are a little self-set group of Aces or Sycamores, I can't remember which one, sorry, here just to allow for the driveway. On to the elevations. It's a large dwelling with traditional design at the front and more modern design to the rear. It makes use of the changing land levels, so features a sort of basement or ground floor at the rear. And the intention here is that the front of the dwelling responds to the conservation area, so that has that more traditional design. So the scale of the dwelling is obviously large, but its context is important, and it is surrounded by also some large dwellings in large plots. As mentioned before, so the dwelling is split across 3 levels, with the basement at the bottom here, and then the ground and first floor. Here on the ground floor, there's a mixture of amenity rooms. On the first floor, you've got 3 large bedrooms with en-suites and dressing areas, etc. Next, this is just the detached garage. So sort of 4 bay, if you like, garage with some first floor storage. You can see from this typical section that storage space is relatively limited in head height to the sort of full height in that central area. I'll just go back to this site plan just so you can have a see of it all here. But when assessing the application in the planning balance and in line with the revised NPPF, it's considered that on balance, the application would be acceptable for the following reasons. So the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. And so the provision of 1 dwelling would be attributed substantial positive weight. The application is still in conflict with DM4, but due to the way that DM4 now accords with that new NPPF, we can only give that conflict limited negative weight. The site also benefits from new policy S5, the NPPF, which looks at, which allows for engaging that tilted balance in favour of schemes where they are limited infill plots. And as this scheme has development to the north, south and east, it constitutes such a plot. As a result, the application, and also just to mention, sorry, the heritage harms have to be given significant weight. There is harm to the conservation area and that has to be acknowledged. But overall, it's considered, while applying the relevant weight to that heritage harm, the scheme is, while being relatively finely balanced, is still in favour of approval, and the application and its conditions are recommended in the report.
Thank you very much, Ed. We have 2 objectors and the agent registered to speak on this item. Joanna Crellin and Ian Prentice. As objectors, you will speak first and you have 5 minutes to share between you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Ian Prentice. This is Joe. We live in the properties directly adjacent to the development site. I understand some of you have visited the site today and you'll see for yourselves it's a very large, significantly out of proportion dwelling, damaging a beautiful piece of open countryside in a conservation area outside of the settlement area. There's 15 conditions that come with the recommendation, 7 stopping work before it starts. But what does that really say is even with all those conditions, the harm still outweighs the benefit. Conditions can manage detail, but they can't outweigh it. We have 3 points. I'm working on my feet here of old framework and new framework. It sounds like you're using both. Old framework, tilted balance. Under the tilted balance, when harm outweighs benefit, how is tilted balance applied? So it's displaced when harm outweighs benefits, as is in your own report, paragraph 8.96, page 184. So the real question is, why are we here to test whether we refuse or approve? Why are we even being asked to approve when harm outweighs benefit? So as has been tested, Monk Hill 2021, heritage harm outweighed, the benefit, tilted balances disapplied. Under the new framework published 8 days ago, and the kind of default, yes, everyone's read about within settlements, but under 8.9, site sits out of the settlement boundary, and outside of the boundary in the new framework is restrictive, not permissive. So old framework, harm outweighs benefit. New framework sits outside of the settlement boundary, which is restrictive and not permissive. Both frameworks sit against Section 72 Listed Buildings Act and your statutory duty tonight to pay special attention to preserving conservation areas, and it's an act of Parliament, and that hasn't changed. The second point is the harm policies, DM11, DM12 heritage, as we talked about, the National Planning Protection Framework heritage tests, and DM4. Why does it carry so much? Because of the site what it is. The council's own appraisal, paragraphs 8.32 and 833, it's one of only 3 key green spaces within Witherley. Its entire value is that it's open. A 3-storey house with a 6-metre garage dwarfing a bungalow, and losing that space forever to put up a mega house. Your own conservation officer, 6.16, the harm arises, quote, irrespective of design approach. You cannot build on openness and keep it. Up to you, Jo.
So I'd like to talk about lorries. I'm Joanna Crellin, and I currently rent the land. The Highway Authority never assessed the site specifically for this proposal. What's in the report is standing advice written in 2011. It feels quite generic and it's about 15 years old. But even with that advice, at paragraph 6.12, there's an admission which says that refuse vehicles are unlikely to access this site. And if a bin lorry can't get in, what happens when the concrete lorries arrive for a 3-storey house? And here's what Church Road actually is. It's a cul-de-sac. It ends at our primary school and there's no turning area at all. A lorry that can't turn is a lorry that reverses past a school, past a children's play park, both within 50 metres of this gate. And this isn't guesswork. On this little lane, the boundary wall has been hit twice in 12 months. A telegraph pole was struck by a lorry that was reversing. So if we also look at the safeguard that you've offered, which is condition 12, it asks for wheel washing, somewhere to park and a timetable for installing them, but that's it. There's no routing or limit on vehicle size. And even across the 15 conditions in this proposal, there isn't one word about construction hours. As it stands, deliveries through school drop-off would be perfectly lawful. A condition can manage the behaviour, but it cannot create turning space that doesn't exist. And there's no margin for error here either, because if you sever a root of a 300-year-old oak for a 6.6 metre garage, or rip out ancient hedging to lay concrete, and no condition on this list will put that back. So I'd like to ask you that the report's own balance says that harm outweighs the benefit, and the law points to one way, which is refusal. The key space would be gone forever. The officer says design can't save it, so refusal. A school on a dead-end lane, construction access never assessed, refusal. And against all of that, one self-build plot, unsecured by any existing agreement.
Can you finish now, please, because your 5 minutes are up.
Okay. But yes, we would like to ask to refuse on policy and law. And the framework paragraphs 212 to 215 and your duty under section 72. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We now have the agent, Lizzie Beresford, to speak. Please start when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking this evening as agent for the application in support of the proposal. The proposal is for a single, high-quality, self-built family home, developed through considerable engagement with the council. A pre-application inquiry was followed by discussions with the planning officer and direct engagement with the conservation officer. The scheme was amended in response, including its scale, design, detailing and landscaping, and is now recommended for approval. The proposal will provide my client with a self-build family home whilst contributing to an identified borough need. The officer report identifies a current shortfall of 17 self-build plots and gives this moderate positive weight. It would therefore directly help address an accepted shortfall in self-build provision. The Council's 2022 SHELAR has already assessed the site as developable, with capacity for up to 9 dwellings. Development at that scale would introduce denser built form, parking and domestic activity, which would not reflect the spacious pattern along Church Road. My client proposes a much more modest scheme, 1 family home within a substantial landscaped setting. That is also relevant to policy DM4. Although technically outside of the settlement boundary, the boundary cuts inward and the site sits directly alongside Witherley's existing built form. The officer recognises it as sustainably related to the village and confirms it would not protrude further into the countryside than adjoining properties. It therefore follows the established depth and pattern of development and represents natural infill within the existing group of houses. The conservation area appraisal recognises the landscaped character of this part of Church Road, including the site and grounds of the old rectory and Witherley Hall, and identifies the boundary wall and vegetation as positive features. Those features are retained and enhanced. The mature tree, vegetation belt and boundary wall remain, with additional native planting towards Post Office Lane. The officer confirms the access, boundary treatment and landscaping would have a neutral impact on the conservation area. The architecture was developed through engagement with the conservation officer. The principal elevation draws from Witherley's traditional character, particularly the old rectory, while contemporary elements are focused towards the rear and the River Anchor. The officer agrees the design reflects the key conservation area characteristics through its form, detailing and materials. The committee report concludes that any remaining heritage harm is at the lower end of less than substantial harm and is outweighed by the public benefits, including housing delivery and a legally secured self-build home. Consultation concerns have also been considered, including views towards St Peter's Church. As members saw today at committee site visit, substantial mature trees screen the neighbouring dwelling and already heavily filter those views. The main dwelling is set well back within the site, leaving only the subordinate 1.5-storey garage within the relevant part of the view. The officer concludes that the garage is appropriately designed and sited. The relevant technical consultees raised no objection subject to conditions, with no significant impacts on neighbouring amenity, highway safety, ecology, archaeology or flood risk. The officer also finds the proposal acceptable under policies DM6, DM7, DM10, DM13, DM17 and DM18, with the heritage balance under DM11 and DM12 supporting approval. The committee report applied the previous NPPF tilted balance because the council cannot demonstrate the 5-year housing land supply and concluded that adverse impacts did not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The new NPPF, published on the 17th of August, strengthens the case. Policy S5 specifically supports limited infilling within groups of houses outside of settlements. That is directly relevant here. This is precisely the type of limited infill now given specific national policy support. A single dwelling within the established pattern of houses sustainably related to Witherley in a borough with an identified housing and self-build need. The new framework therefore provides clear additional support. The framework also recognises self-builders as a housing needs group, while policies HO7 and HE9 support evidenced housing need and conserving positive conservation area features. Overall, this is a carefully designed self-build family home, which has evolved through engagement with the council, meets an identified need, represents natural infill within the established pattern of development, and retains and enhances the landscape characteristics important to this part of the conservation area. The officer recommends approval with the new national policy position providing further support. I would therefore respectfully ask members to support the recommendation and grant planning permission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will now debate the item, including moving and seconding it. Sorry, Councillor Gibbons.
A couple of questions. The applicant suggests this site is in local plan for up to 9 dwellings, I think she said. Is that correct, or did I misunderstand that?
Previously.
I'll come back on that one just while they're discussing. The agent reference that is in the document called the SHELAR. The acronym is the SHELAR, Strategic Housing and Economic Land Availability Assessment. So it's not an allocation in the local plan. Instead, that's part of the local plan evidence base, where it's a very high level assessment, but not an allocation.
Thanks, Chris. I thought that might be the case. I don't know if people know this area. I down there at the weekend. I went to the Red Lion, the Blue Lion. So it's a lovely pub. I can't imagine getting a truck down there to lay all the concrete and get all the supplies in is going to be that's going to be very difficult. I don't see how it would happen, to be honest. But I suppose these trucks must have to go down there at some point. But that does seem an issue, and I would suggest if this is passed, that we add a condition about the hours that the site is operating. That seems at least a reasonable thing that we should be doing. Also, reading about the flooding and the water rolls, and one of your conditions on condition 3 has various things that should be done for other things like impact on badgers, nesting birds. And I would have thought we could add something there to make sure there's no pollution going to the river, because I can imagine building a concrete pad to build a house on, there's a fair chance that concrete could leak off into the river. I think we should put some protections in place for that and condition that as well. I can't say I'm in support of this proposal, but until it balances against us again. But I think if it does go ahead, we need to have some decent conditions, and I'd suggest those too, at least.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. Oh, did you want to come back first, Ed? Yeah.
Just to say, condition 3 can easily be amended in that regard to add the submission of details to ensure the river is adequately protected. I expect the County Council of Ecology didn't recommend it in that way because there isn't any development within it, but perfectly reasonable suggestion. So I'm sure the applicant can work with an ecologist to ensure that. And then a condition can also easily be added with regards to hours of use. That's not a problem at all.
Thank you. Councillor Bray.
Yeah, I'm a bit in the same camp as Councillor Gibbons on this, really. I'm a bit unsure. In terms of these self-built houses, the design is obviously subjective. You either like it or you don't. So it would be my taste, but that's not why we're here. In terms of the principle of development, we do. The government are very keen on these self-built dwellings, and we don't have enough in this borough. And I think that is probably why. Therefore, I'm probably coming down on the side of suggesting that we do approve it. I really do take concerns about the access times and things, and I think lorries delivering concrete and various things mixing with school times is a recipe for disaster in that part of the village. As people know, I've sort of got to know Witherley a lot better than I did over the last 3 or 4 months, but it is a very tight around there, and I think very careful construction management plans are needed for both safety and also to make sure that people are not disturbed. And I think we need to take particular account of school times as well. So with those and the condition about the river, I will accept it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bray. Any further speakers on this item? Oh, sorry, Councillor Moore, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's difficult. It's clearly, as 8.96, as the planning balance is a fine one in this particular case. And Councillor Bray suggests that really the design of the building is somewhat, assessing design of buildings is somewhat subjective. I'm not sure it is when you're trying to apply conservation and heritage criteria to the building. I look at this building, clearly there's an issue about size and the way it kind of dominates the landscape and the conservation area. That's clearly an issue. But I also have a bit of an issue with the design in the sense that it's a bizarre combination of a historic pastiche with a modern rear. It is a very odd sort of design for a conservation area. I mean, I don't like historical pastiches anyway as a matter of taste, but I think also it's actually poor conservation policy to allow bizarre procedures to pop up everywhere. It is obviously trying to be a sort of an Edwardian house, and its frontage is trying to be an Edwardian house, but frankly not very successfully. And I think if you want to be Edwardian house, then why not go to an Edwardian pattern book and copy one, or even wander around Stonegate in Leicester? There's many wonderful examples of Edwardian architecture that frankly you could copy and would produce a better frontage than this one. The rear is completely at odds with the frontage. Maybe there's a reason for that, who knows? But it certainly, to me, does not seem to meet heritage and conservation criteria of a building that fits in with a conservation area landscape. I think one can make a very strong argument for that. So I am uncomfortable with this particular plan, and I think that something much better could have been frankly built on this site. I'm also rather confused about its public benefit argument. It seems to me that this is not a large home that's being built for disabled children. This is a home for one family that might otherwise be used for perhaps 9 other plots for 9 other families. So I'm not sure there's a very strong argument for the public benefit of this particular site and the way plan is being proposed at the moment. So for that reason, I'm very sceptical about allowing this to go forward, particularly from the point of view of the conservation area and the impact on the conservation area that it will inevitably have.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Actually, we had a site visit there today, and whilst I appreciate what you've said, it does reflect quite an image from some of the houses that are already within the village. So I think that they're trying to marry up so that it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb, and it actually reflects what's currently around it. And I think that is quite. Did you want to speak, Councillor Allen?
Sorry, yes, Chair, just one sort of question for officers if we can. So there's been the mention about the design and the size of it. Can we restrict or remove PD so it can't get even bigger, please?
Yes, just to clarify, condition 15 does exactly that. So you officers thought exactly as you did, in that it's a large scheme on a large plot, but any larger would be a problem. And I think also doing that gives an indication to how officers might consider if more dwellings were proposed on this site and there was more footprint and more built form. So yeah, there's a condition 15, it does exactly that.
Thank you. And can I just clarify, does that cover the garage as well? But bear in mind, it's somewhat larger than my 2 up, 2 down.
If it doesn't, it will. Yes, yeah. So if the proposer is happy to amend that condition 15 to ensure it covers the garage, we can certainly do that.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was just thinking about the bin lorry saying it couldn't get to the property. There are lots of properties that the bin lorry doesn't get to, and you have to bring your bins to the boundary. And next door to this plot, we can see the jetty, which is another house right on the river. And I don't for 1 minute think that the bin lorry can get down to the jetty. I think they have to bring theirs up to the road. So I don't really think that is a good indication of any forthcoming problems with vehicles accessing the site.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? So we've had Councillor Bray has actually moved that we approve the recommendation along with the conditions that we've just been mentioning, and bearing in mind that there's no other. Yeah, oh right, thank you. Councillor Allen will second that then. Just to be clear, the conditions, there will be restriction on permitted development.
Yep, so I've got the conditions as a construction hours condition. That's a new condition. Amending the condition with respect to ecology to ensure that the impacts on the river are considered. And then picking up the permitted development rights. I've just reread again, the permitted development right specifies outbuildings. So I think that does pick it up. So yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bray.
Yeah, that's correct. I just on the about the new condition. I think 2 parts to that really. Number one, the standard sort of hours of working that people, to make it acceptable that people don't work until 11 o'clock at night or whatever. But also specifically around deliveries at school times. I think we need to be careful.
And you're happy with that as well, Councillor Allen? Thank you very much. So we've had a motion to approve the recommendation as from Councillor Bray and seconded by Councillor Allen. All those in favour, please raise their hands now. Keep them raised. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Against? Thank you. 1 against. So the application therefore is approved. Thank you very much indeed. Right. We now move on to item 7. And that's on page 5 to 12 on the agenda, and it's application 26/4/00467/CONDIT. And it's 50 Woodlands Drive, Groby. Wim, could I ask you to present the report, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. So this is a variation of condition application varying conditions 2 and 4 of a previously approved planning permission, and that permission was for a 2-storey side extension, a 2-storey extension and canopy to the front elevation, a single-storey rear extension and the replacement of an existing flat roof. Condition 2 was for the approved plans. So this variation of condition application seeks to change to an amendment to the garage roof to create a habitable loft space through a 1.5-storey side extension, and with the addition of a rear-facing dormer. This extension would serve a dressing room and an additional ensuite bathroom accessed via bedroom 4. And condition 4 is the placement of obscure glazed windows. The reason for its entry at committee was 5 letters of support were received by immediate neighbours. A 6th letter of support was received and taken into consideration at a later date. Woodlands Drive is at the western boundary of Groby, just north of a parcel of Charnwood Forest, that you can see by the red blob on the site plan there. The application site comprises a 2-storey detached dwelling, and it's mainly on a street that's predominantly surrounded by single-storey dwellings. The majority of them are single-storey dwellings, but there are sort of 2-storey dwellings interspersed. I'm just going to talk you through what was previously approved. So we've got the site location plan in front of you there, just showing the red section showing the previously approved 2-storey extension, and the grayed out area I think that's just the previously approved elevations, but I think the greyed out area is just slightly different with the contrast there, so that's confused me a little bit. But you can see that the element to the right hand side where the arrow is the extension that's been previously approved. And the previously approved floor plans, you can see the double bay garage to the right hand side. Some of that has been incorporated into the ground floor of the existing dwelling. And that's the previously approved loft conversion just in front of you there with the red section as part of the approved plans. So this is currently the new site location plan, which has come forward as part of the variation of condition. Members will note the Council's Good Design Guide recognises that corner plots play an important role within the street scene. The guidance highlights the overdevelopment of such plots. They can result in oppressive form and potentially development that is harmful to the character of the area, but we're focusing mainly on neighbouring amenity within this condition application. The application proposes an additional dual pitched dormer extension on the western elevation, positioned above the second half of the existing garages. The LPA remains concerned regarding the impact on number 77 to the north of the site. In assessing the proposal, we have applied 2 key tests, firstly being the 45-degree assessment, and secondly, the recommended separation distances for 2-storey development. The latter seeks to resist oppressive and overbearing development, so we recommend a separation distance of 14 metres. The variation of condition application is significantly below that at only 8 metres from the principal elevation at number 77. This window in question, to where the cursor is now, actually serves a larger bedroom, with the main bedroom for number 77. This window in question would also experience oblique loss of privacy and intervisibility caused by the rear-facing dormer at the rear. So furthermore, due to the corner plot location and the fact that the development would be sited forward of number 77, the proposal would appear dominant and overbearing when viewed from the habitable window at number 77. So the development also fails the 45-degree guidance, as previously noted. It's really important to notice here that both properties are south-facing orientations at the front, with the extended property sited forward and the southwest of the neighbouring number 77, and this is the area that the LPA is most concerned about. So consequently, officers conclude that the development would cause unacceptable harm to the living conditions and the occupiers of number 77 through an overbearing form of development. These are the revised elevations. You can see the 1.5 storey extension to the right hand side that is part of this application. And these are the new floor plans. You can see the loft conversion remains, and that's the ground floor and the first floor there that the case is going over. You can see that where the cursor is now, you can see that's the bedroom number 4, the dressing room and the ensuite bathroom would serve bedroom number 4. So here is a rear visual of the elevation of the rear of the property. You can see the section of the right features the rear dormer window in question and the additional first floor accommodation. That dormer is what the LPA concludes may result in or would result in loss of privacy for the neighbouring number 77. And finally, I just leave you with this Google Earth 3D view that gives an idea of the relationship between the site and the dwelling that we consider would experience unacceptable amenity harm. It's important to note that all 6 letters of support that received by the LPA reference only the design of the proposal with no mention of the amenity impact. The officers and the LPA have acknowledged the letter of support from number 77 to the rear of the site, but notwithstanding this, the officers have a duty to protect the future occupier amenity, and as outlined previously, this letter only referred to design. So in conclusion, the recommendation before panel members is one for refusal. Thank you. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Graham. We have the agent to speak on this item, Harry Fowler. Please start when you're ready.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. Thanks, Gwion. I'd like to start with what I think is the most important point, is that this is here tonight not because of local objection, but because of local support. I would also add, in response, that most of the supporting letters supported the design. Mainly they wanted to see a pitched roof rather than a flat roof. However, these are letters of support. I think it's reasonably inferred that in giving a letter of support, they are supporting an application in the whole, and that should they have had serious concerns about amenity, they wouldn't have put forward a letter of support more generally. So also I'd like to reiterate, yeah, design is seen as acceptable from the officer's perspective, and I agree. The dormer is okay in terms of design. The materials are coherent. The site's not overdeveloped. That's all confirmed in the report. Within the report, there is a point on amenity where it does say there's no unacceptable privacy or overlooking impacts in paragraph 8.9. That may be a typo, because they do go on to explain their 3 concerns, which are loss of light, privacy and overlooking. Now, all of those issues relate to number 77, which, as we know, has submitted a letter of support. Now, I fully understand the council have to look out for potential future occupiers, but it's a fairly substantial consideration in my view. Now, the concerns of the plan have relied significantly on the good design guide, as was mentioned. Now, in my view, this has been misapplied to some degree. So the report. Officer's reports does state that the council's good design guide advises a separation distance of 14 metres between a habitable room of a single-storey property and a 2-storey property. Now, what that fails to reference is that this is from a section of the design guide titled back to side distances. Now, these 2 properties are not back to side, they're almost front to back, as it were. So technically, it doesn't really apply in this instance. As well as that, of course, it does say it's advisory. It should be viewed within the context. Good design guides are there to guide good design, but of course they can't realistically be well applied in every context. I would also note, in terms of the overlooking onto number 77 from the bathroom, that window could always be obscure glazed. I think it's a reasonable suggestion that it might be, and again, that in my view solves that issue. The other technical standard of concern for the council is the 45-degree rule and the impact of loss of light. Now, the good design guide illustrates an example of when that's applied, and that is typically applied when 2 properties share a back wall. They are back to back with each other, and the idea being generally that if someone wants to extend outwards, that's not going to have a significant impact on the direct neighbour. Again, these properties don't have that relationship. And if you look at the plans, if you were to take a 45-degree line from any of the front-facing windows of any property in that street, they would eventually intersect a property opposite. This property already intersects a 45-degree line in that sense, and I think it's like misnomer to apply it here. There's also appeal examples. 2024 appeal in Weybridge, the inspector confirmed, while the council referred to the 45-degree test, the relationship between the properties is not side by side, and therefore it's not the typical arrangement for applying this. So, in my view, both of the concerns stem from misapplied guidance, and therefore, rather than objectively assessing the design and the amenity impacts, I think we should be subjectively assessing them. Now, if we subjectively assess them, what are the real life amenity concerns? Well, we have supporting letters from 6 residents, and I think you can see in the late items agenda pack that those 6 residents are essentially all within the cul-de-sac. So these are the residents who have the clearest view of the extension. They've all submitted letters of support. So essentially, we shouldn't be looking at quantitative guidance. I can appreciate that it's very useful to have a good design guide, but it should not and does not apply here, and it should not override the opinions of the immediate neighbours. The theme of tonight has been that the council have been in a difficult position, having to override the views of local people. Here we have a situation where the views of local people are fairly clear, and the council have the opportunity to support that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fowler. We will now debate the item, including moving and seconding. Councillor Bray.
Chair, I don't have a massively strong view either way on this, but I don't see an awful lot wrong with it, to be honest. I'll be perfectly happy to accept it. I think, obviously, clearly, thank you to our officers who have looked very closely at this, but yeah, as we say, we have to judge each one on its merits, and if all the neighbours are happy, I think I'm happy too. And obviously, if people in future houses don't want to buy the house, they won't buy it, will they? With the relation of people who move in. So I'm perfectly happy to move it with the appropriate conditions put on, including one obscure grazing.
Councillor Lynch.
Took the words out of my mouth. I really think that the finished result will be better than the one they've got, and really can't see it being that effective on any of the neighbours. I second it.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, I'll just start off by saying I too hate flat roofs with a passion, having had one in the past. Officers, can we just bring the proposed drawings up, please? Where is it? The sort of multiple view, if possible. Thank you. So potentially, if you lost the dormer at the back, and for argument's sake, replaced it with a Velux, or put a window into the gable, would that make it more acceptable?
In terms of limiting any sort of perceived overlooking, yes, it would, yeah.
Okay, as the agents here, is that something potentially be happy to pursue, if I can ask that, Chair?
You're proposing a
Supposed to do that. I'm sorry. I do apologise, but no, you can't answer that. Yeah, no. Does this overcome the issue with overlooking, if that was to be the case? Because to me, it's very close to that other property. I'm just concerned that, you know, it's by the time it's finished, it's going to be over and above what would be acceptable as far as I'm concerned. So can you just go back to the picture there? Yeah, can you see how close it's going to be to that bungalow at the back? This is the only problem that I've got. It's going to be very, very close to that property there. And if that's a primary window in that first bit there, then it's I'm not happy with that. I'm sorry. Councillor Lynn. Sorry?
Thank you.
Come back.
Can I come back? Thank you. In which case, I'd like to propose a deferral so this can be discussed with the agent. See if a more acceptable proposal can be
Councillor
deferred.
Lynch.
With the greatest respect, if you went out in daylight and walked around this area, you would find 50 houses within half a mile of here, which would be in a worse position than that. Really, I mean, as the point was made, the 45-degree line, you could carry it on to infinity, and it hit virtually every house you can imagine. I really can't accept that's a good reason for refusing that. It's a fairly straightforward and sensible application, in my opinion.
Yeah. Look, the issue is the relationship with that property behind. Clearly, the people there are happy to accept. The people there are happy. They're happy to write in support of it. I'll stick to my original proposal. The government are very clear. We should be looking at big schemes here. We shouldn't be bringing back to committee a variation of condition about a window. So yeah, I think that's daft. So I'll happily propose that, providing it is obscurely glazed and non-opening and all the rest of it, to stop the overlooking, that we accept the development.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. So we've had a proposal to approve the application from Councillor Bray, seconded by Councillor Lynch. Sorry, come back to Ed. Yes, I do apologise.
So just to confirm what the motion is, my recommendation would be that you give delegated authority for the head of planning to decide the appropriate conditions. It'll be relatively commonplace on this. That's what we're talking to. The nod from the solicitor is always good. But specifically picking up obscure glazing, and you mentioned non-opening. Could I suggest there's a standard wording condition where you basically say top opening as long as it's above 1.7 meters, i.e. above eye line, so that if you're in the bathroom and you want to open a window, you can. But
That's what I meant.
is that right? Yes, I thought it was. So one of it's one of approval, overturn with conditions to be delegated to the head of planning to include that obscure grazing and limited opening.
Right, thank you. You've got that, everybody. Thank you very much. So we have a motion to approve the application, moved by Councillor Bray, seconded by Councillor Lynch, with those conditions that Ed has just outlined with delegation. So all those in favour of the application, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Against? 1. An abstention. Thank you. So the application therefore is approved with those conditions. Thank you very much indeed. We will now move on to item 8. On page 13 to 72, land adjacent to Myra Technology Park, application 22//00882/OUT. Can I please ask Chris to present the report?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This item now before you, so we're land adjacent to Myra Technology Park in Warwickshire, and I won't read out the full description, but the full description is there in front of you. Ed, if you could please just sort of go through the slides. I'll just quickly run through the slides. So this is the application that previously came to committee in June this year, so 2 months ago, and twice last year as well. There's been no further changes to the application itself, and therefore the presentation slides are the same as what was presented to you previously last year, and also in June 2 months ago as well. So it remains the same, and I'll just ask Ed to pause on the highway works. Sorry, one more, I think, or 2 more, and 1 more. Thank you. And I've asked Ed to pause on this slide particularly. So this relates to the off-site works to Drayton Lane and Woodford Lane, and forms the main objection that's been received to the application, and formed the main part of this discussion when the application was considered both last year in 2025 and in June this year as well. So when considered in June this year, the application was deferred for further reconsultation with the highway authorities, and that specifically relates to the working relationship for the off-site works for these 2 junctions, and particularly for Drayton Lane, which is the one at the very top of the slide there. So as set out, the application remains the same as previously considered, and the report structure also remains the same. So further to the June Planning Committee report, this report now in front of you adds in Appendix 4, which is the late items report from the June 2026 meeting, which was extensive, so needed to be added to the report, and also further Appendix 5, and this is new information that's been received since June this year, so within the last 2 months. Appendix 5 is also read alongside the late items paper for this evening's Planning Committee as well. And across both Appendix 5 and the late items report, these include consultation responses from Leicestershire County Council, with 3 responses received since June, from National Highways with 2 separate responses received, and also a recent response from Warwickshire County Council. So these responses, particularly recent responses, are clear that they have reviewed all the information put forward by both the applicant and by objectors. And these responses received also remains the same with regards to their view on the left in, left out, or LILO scheme for Drayton Lane and the A5. And in their view, this is the 3 local highway authorities, it remains acceptable in their view. Leicestershire County Council have also been clear in their response to say that the signalised junction put forward by the objectors is not deemed necessary, given that an acceptable scheme is proposed by the applicant, that being the left in, left out. Further information has been received from both the applicant and ERSS as the objector, with these summarised in Appendix 5 and the late items. Taking into account all of the above, together with the arguments made from both the applicant and the objector, a key consideration remains that the Planning Committee forming a view on unreasonable restrictions resulting from the proposal on existing businesses. This is set out previously in paragraph 200 of the NPPF, which has now been updated as of last week to be policy P4 of the new NPPF. But this wording set out to you in the late items paper. The discussion on this is set out from paragraphs 8.37 onwards in the committee report, which is on page 29 of the report back in front of you. As set out in paragraphs 8.40 and the paragraphs above, whilst it's accepted that there will be some impact, whether this is an unreasonable restriction lies with us as a decision maker in using our planning judgment. This means that taking into account all the information put forward from both the applicant and ERSS as an objector, together with the statutory consultee responses, it is a matter of judgment as to whether the proposed development would lead to unreasonable restrictions on existing businesses. Paragraphs 8.41 and 8.42 of the report set out the original view when the application was first considered last year, and this judgment remains the same following all the information that has been submitted since then, as set out in appendices 1 to 5 of the report and those first few paragraphs of the report as well, together with the late items in front of you this evening. This also remains the same through the consideration of the new NPPF policy P4 in brackets 1 as well, further to the change from last week. The recommendation therefore remains one for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. So we have no objectors to this, so we'll go straight into members' debate. Yeah, no speakers. Councillor Bray.
Chair, I think nobody can accuse us of not doing correct due diligence on this item. We have been back to it, we've looked at it, we've triple checked it, and every time we've now got a very clear officer recommendation, which I'll move that we accept. I don't think there's anywhere further we should go on this. I would like to move the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you very much, Chair. So when I moved the deferral at the last meeting, I think it made it clear it was very much a last roll of the dice. I think we're pretty much now at the point where we are at a complete dead end in terms of trying to pursue it. So I can't see any other option other than setting the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any further speakers? No? Do you wish to come back at all, Chris? No? So we will now take the vote. Please raise your hand if you are in favour of approving the application. Keep it raised until everyone. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Therefore, the application is approved. So we'll now move on to the last item, which is appeals progress, item 12. Could I please ask Chris to present the report?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Final item, members. So I'm on page 196 of the last page of your appeal pack. There's been 3 appeals received since we last met last month.
Councillor Cook's still outside.
Ooh. I'll pause there and come back to let her in. Thank you, members. Just on the final item for planning appeals received, I'm on page 196, so the final page of your report pack, and it's those 3 final appeal decisions on that list. So I'm at third from bottom, Paddock House, Ashby Road, Stapleton, land northwest of Leicester Road, El Shilton, and land off Barwell Lane, Kirkby Mallory, all 3 dismissed. The other items in the appeals paper to draw your attention to with regards to a hearing and inquiry coming up. So it's the reference dates for the New Boldfordon hearing in October and an inquiry for a site in Burbage in November. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that concludes, unless there's any questions to Chris, no. That concludes the business of the evening, and therefore I close the meeting at 9:14. Thank you very much for your attendance and a safe journey home. Thank you.